Welcome back to the Pastor's Toolkit, where we teach you leadership skills to grow healthy churches. Today's skill is learning to read the Bible with greater imagination and to think through one of our favorite passages in the scripture so that hopefully it will come alive for you as it has for us. And you'll join us in the wonder and amazement of discovering this chapter. Today, we'll be reading it from the NLT, the New Living Translation. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciple asked, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sin? The disciples weren't so different than we are. They wanted to know the dirty details. They'd been with Jesus before. They know that he has the ability to expose hidden things, like how the woman by the well had five husbands, and they wanted the juicy details. The question is a bit silly for Jews who don't believe and probably hadn't even heard of the concept of reincarnation. How could the man born blind have sinned? It seems when you put yourself into the mindset of the disciples, they assume that this lifelong tragedy must have been the result of some great sin of the parents, and they wanted Jesus to tell them what it was. He surprises them with his answer. The first of many surprises in this chapter. He said, it was not because of his sin or his parents' sin. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the task assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I'm here in the world, I am the light of the world. Let's shift perspectives. Let's imagine for a moment that you are the man born blind. You hear the commotion of a group of people walking by. They start talking about you, asking their leader about whether you or your parents sinned to be in the pathetic condition you found yourself in. And then that rabbi, that teacher says that something absolutely shocking about you. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. What? No one had ever said anything positive about you before, let alone that power of God would be revealed through you. Then Jesus does something even crazier and more surprising. You want to know what he did? Yes, he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eye. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. Why did Jesus spit in the mud? We've heard many theories about it, but it's all speculations. Jesus heals many ways in the gospel, sometimes by speaking, sometimes by touching, but this time by spitting. But I think more importantly, by giving the man born blind the opportunity to respond with obedience, which he does. Now let's imagine from his perspective what it must have been like. You're sitting there minding your own business, begging in hopes to get some coins from which you can buy your dinner. Well, suddenly this guy shows up talking about big things about God's glory will be shown through you, then spits in the dirt and smears mud on your eyes, then gives you a command to go wash it out. What do you have to lose? Put yourself in his sandals. Bent on the edge of the water, splashing waters on the face, and suddenly, for the first time in your entire life, your eyes, Your optic nerves start to receive a signal that shoots into your brain. You're experiencing a whole new sense you've never known before. Let's think this through a moment. It's really hard to imagine how we could articulate the very concept of sight to someone who has never seen before. Our vocabulary falls short if they have no frame of reference. Think to yourself. Pause the video and really think. If you were talking with someone who has never had sight before and they ask you, what does seeing mean? How could you answer them? It's hard, right? All our words, colors, shapes, light, dark, none of those words have much meaning for them. You not only have to see it to believe it, but you have to see to even understand seeing. Okay, so there he is splashing his face by the pool. Maybe the first thing he's seeing is his own muddy reflection in the muddy water with ripples and droplets. Then he looks up across the pool. He sees trees in the distance. What are those? And then he snaps his neck up and sees birds flying overhead. He'd never really understand how birds fly before. And there are colors in the sky and on the plants and people's clothings. Everything is a visual feast. He can't get enough. He wants to see everything, to study all the things around him. To an outsider, he might look like a crazy person looking around intensely, looking for the first time. Let's continue in verse 8. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said he was, and others says no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them the man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see. Where is he now? They asked. I don't know, he replied. He was the talk of the town, and the word spread quickly. Verse 13. Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus made the mud and healed him. Let's imagine this scene for a moment. On this, the best day of his entire life, suddenly he's called before the top religious leaders in his community. He walks into their grand building, his footsteps echoing in the fancy hallway before he's brought to a group of very distinguished men. He didn't really know that distinguished was the word to describe them, but he could tell they were very different than everyone else. With their carefully shaped beard and fancy hats and intricate robes, and for the first time he became suddenly aware that was another word he didn't actually know, that he was underdressed for such a place. There in his stained beggar clothing, he'd never thought too much about his appearance because he'd never been able to see it before. Verse 15. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them, he put the mud over my eye, and when I washed it away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said this man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on Sabbath. Others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was a deep division of opinions among them. This was the first time being in the middle of such important conversation and with such grand, respectable men. He felt a bit out of the place, perhaps, and conscious that he didn't really belong there. Verse 17 onwards says like this. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about this man who healed you? The man replied, I think he must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could see now. So they called his parents. They asked them, "Is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he see now?" His parents replied, "We know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, "He's old enough, ask him." That must have really hurt. You can understand the position of his parents. They'd lived with the social stigma of having a handicapped son since infancy, and people speculating and whispering about what great sin they'd committed to have such a son. And now they are getting interrogated by the religious leaders in their community. All they wanted to do is distance themselves from this mess. We don't think that it's that they didn't love their son, but they didn't want to lose whatever low standing they had in the community to face the risk of being expelled from the synagogue. So there the many is truly alone. The only people in the world who were supposed to love and accept him were distancing themselves from him. The best day in his life was quickly turning into the worst. Verses 24 and 25. So, for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, "God should get the glory for this because we know this man, Jesus, is a sinner." "I don't know whether he's a sinner," the man replied, "but I know this. I was blind and now I can see." Things were getting heated. This is the time when most people would shrink back. They'd give in to the religious authorities. They'd want to say whatever was expected of them to make the situation go away, but not this man. He wasn't intimidated by the impressive outfits of their lavish meeting halls. They had better educations than him for sure, but there was something preventing them from seeing the obvious things here, and he wasn't quite able to put his finger on it. Verse 26 and 27. "But what did he do?" they asked. "How did he heal you?" "Look," the man exclaimed, "I told you once. Didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" You won't expect this courageous backtalk from someone so much lower than them on the social ladder, but he was getting exasperated by their inability to acknowledge what was plain to everyone else. Jesus is worthy of being followed because he has such power. Verses 28 onwards. Then they cursed him and said, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from." "Why? That's very strange," the man replied. "He healed my eye, and yet you don't know where he comes from? We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will." Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eye of someone born blind. If this man was not from God, he could not have done that. "You were born a total sinner," they said. "Are you trying to teach us?" And they threw him out of the synagogue. His astonishingly bold, courageous testimony is what we love about in this chapter. Here is an ordinary man, worse than ordinary, a lifetime beggar and social outcast, who has one brief encounter with Jesus and has his life radically transformed. Not only was the central problem of his life immediately solved, but his very identity seems to have been transformed in the process. Now he is a bold witness, a persuasive proponent of Jesus' life changing power, not ashamed of who Jesus is or what he did, but ready to stand before the top religious officials and call out their stubborn hypocrisy. Who would have thought that this man had it in him to witness so potently? But Jesus did. Jesus saw his potential when no one else could. Here's how the chapter ends from verses 35 to 41. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir? I want to believe in him." Remember, the first time he met Jesus, he was still blind, so didn't know what he looked like. "You have seen him," Jesus said, "and he's speaking to you." "Yes, Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Then Jesus told him, "I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they can see that they are blind." Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, "Are you saying we are blind?" "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty," Jesus replied. "But you remain guilty because you claim to see." We hope this chapter has come alive in your imagination the same way it has for us. Please take time, put in the effort to really put yourself in the shoes of the original readers and even the original participants or audiences of the Bible to read it and hear the words from their point of view. The Bible happened to real people, and the better we are able to read it and take it in from their perspective, the richer and more applicable we'll find it. Thanks for joining us on the Pastor's Toolkit. Feel free to take our way of looking at this story and adapt it into your own sharing. It's Jesus' story, not ours. As long as you make Jesus look good as you tell the story, we'll be happy. See you next time.